Have you ever looked at Monk's Dragon Kick and thought, that is weirdly the strongest base GCD the Monk has, and then seen that there is actually a time where spamming it for a bit is considered optimal? In this video, we will be looking at 5 janky and weird optimization tricks across different jobs in Final Fantasy XIV. If you feel I missed a really good one, be sure to let me know in the comments. Now, all of these optimization tricks, while janky and weird, tend to be janky because they clearly come with a massive downside if you use them at the wrong time, while at the same time giving only a relatively small benefit for being used correctly. This is often because they somehow derail your rotation in some way, or risk wasting some valuable resource if done at the wrong time. What I mean to say with this is that while these tricks may seem awesome to pull off, in the vast majority of situations, these tricks are detrimental in the hands of anything but a master of the job. For the first trick, let's start with that Monk example I teased at the beginning. You may have heard of the Dragon Kick meme rotation for Monk, which gained prominence through the simple fact that the majority of the Monk's toolkit is only useful occasionally in a way. True Strike and Snap Punch, for example, are only good in the way that they do more upfront damage than Twin Snakes and Demolish, and push your combo sequence along, which is required for Dragon Kick itself to grant Leaden Fist, which further makes Bootshine even viable in the first place. Meaning that the basic 1-2-3 combo you get by level 6 are only sort of good if you take in the whole picture. Meaning whenever you use True Strike, it is typically with the intention of using Demolish or a step 1 combo later. Whenever you use Snap Punch, it is with the intention of using a step 1 combo follow-up. And given that the payoff of comboing Dragon Kick is only realized when you use Bootshine 3 GCDs later, this can sometimes leave you in situations where it is not possible to reach this payoff before the fight ends. By extension, if the fight is ending in about 3 GCDs, then the payoff of Twin Snakes, extra damage output for a while, and Demolish, damage over time, also both kind of lose their teeth. This number, 3 GCDs, is actually where this janky optimization trick comes into play. If you know that the fight will end, or that your target will at least become untargetable within 3 GCDs, which is about 6 seconds, then the only question you need to ask is this. Is a Leaden Fist Bootshine going to happen within the next 3 GCDs? If yes, then continuing your rotation as is fine. In any other case, however, using 2 Dragon Kicks followed by 6-sided star turns out to be superior to anything else you can come up with. The key detail here is that if the fight does not in fact end immediately after 6-sided star, you are losing DPS from that very moment. This is both because 6-sided star is highly inefficient in terms of potency per second, but also because using Dragon Kick twice in a row completely breaks your combo, so you have to start from the beginning again. In a similar fashion, if the fight is suddenly ending within 2 GCDs, you can use Dragon Kick and then 6-sided star. And if it ends in 1 GCD, simply use 6-sided star. The reason why we don't extend this to 4 GCDs in any way is because in most situations, this leads to a Leaden Fist Bootshine every time. To get a little bit nerdy, we can simplify out the 3 GCD finisher sequence and apply it to anything leading up to it. With 3 GCDs or less, it is optimal, or at least equal in value to a competing combo. With more GCDs than that, this becomes complicated. The second trick, which I was made aware of by Ensemvarg back in my Mage comparison video, is similar in concept but for Red Mage. Did you know that the generation of mana stacks is unrelated to performing the combo step correctly? Of the 3 single target melee combo steps, Zwerchhau has an advantage over both Riposte and Redoublement. If we ignore the fact that it will do terrible damage when used outside the combo sequence, Zwerchhau costs only 15 mana where Riposte costs 20, and the GCD of Zwerchhau is 1.5 while it is 2.2 for Redoublement. This means that if you are in the scenario that you have 45 or at least less than 50 of both mana types, and the fight is ending in less than 10 seconds, then you can perform a triple Zwerchhau combo in 4.5 seconds, followed by the magic combo, letting resolution land on the 9.5 second mark. If you use the melee combo correctly, Redoublement would make this timing 10.2 seconds. And if you didn't have 50 mana, you would at the very least need to cast 2 more spells to fix that, adding an additional 5 seconds. Now, how much you gain from this is complicated, but if you use this combo unnecessarily when the fight isn't about to end, then just the melee combo alone loses 670 potency, and mainly, the only significant benefit is that you save 0.7 seconds and maybe saving 5 of each mana type might also be significant sometimes. The third trick, which Jet Eriksson brought up back in my tank comparison video, is a lot more generally feasible to use and also comes with a smaller loss if done incorrectly. If you've ever glanced at an optimal Dark Knight opener, you will find that the Blackest Night, or TBN as it is commonly called, is used before the battle even starts. This is because Blood Weapon 2 is used before the battle starts, which means the very first GCD the Dark Knight performs will generate 600 MP. Either you lose out on those 600 MP, or you spend them prematurely on TBN. The logical reasoning is that a lot of bosses are perfectly capable of breaking TBN, even with just auto attacks. So applying TBN prematurely like this usually is fine. However, sometimes a boss might just be too wimpy to be capable of breaking TBN on time. But what if you could have a DPS pull the boss for you? They have less defense on their armor and less HP, so TBN will be frailer and break more easily. Obviously, this kind of strategy requires some planning with your team, or even some convincing, or dare I say, manipulation. But in some cases, it is the optimal solution to the problem. A bonus tip for this is that if you play a Dark Knight and often run into the issue of using TBN on a raid wide only to have your shield not break on you, consider putting your shield on one of the frailer jobs in the raid. The shield will be far more likely to break from random raid wide damage on them. Remember, the Dark Arts effect from TBN breaking can be viewed as a free extra 3000 MP to spend on attacks. So if you want to optimize your burst just a bit more, making the most of every TBN this way can be helpful. The fourth trick is a slightly outdated ninja trick. I feel it is interesting to bring up because it is such an ingrained trick in the ninja's playbook that I still see ninjas use it today despite it no longer being viable, due to potency adjustments to area of effect attacks in Endwalker. Now, those in the know probably already are completely aware that I'm talking about Doton. Doton itself is functionally a very strange ability, aside from the strangeness inherent in being a ninjutsu, so it works like a weapon skill and all that. Doton states that it deals 80 potency to any enemies who enter. The way this works is that it deals 80 potency every 3 seconds, so 6 ticks over 18 seconds. Simple, right? Except Doton also does 80 potency the moment it is placed. This adds up to 7 ticks, which, strictly on a single target, still is worse than Raiton alone. This much makes sense. However, the reason why some players might have it so ingrained to use Doton on single target may be related to how it used to be. Back in Shadowbringers, the damage difference between Doton and Raiton was so close that you needed to understand the weirdness of Doton to even know that it had the capability of being stronger than Raiton. So this subject has been discussed to death back then. Doton being superior to Raiton on single target was a subject of mastering the job, knowing when you could get away with it and when you couldn't. In fact, in 6.0, Doton was still usable on single target, namely because you could place Doton and use Hide to regain your ninjutsu charges. And if the tank simply pulled the boss into Doton, that was free damage. But it goes deeper than that. In 6.0, Doton did 9 ticks of 70 potency, including the placement one at the start. This meant Doton did 630 potency while Raiton did 650. Add a history of weird janky hidden bonus ticks and that it used to be optimal. And it becomes very easy to reason that Doton probably has a 10th tick hidden somewhere up its sleeve too, right? In 6.1, changes were made to Doton and to Hide. Doton's potency per tick increased to 80 and the duration was cut to 18 seconds from 24. One tick was lost entirely, and one tick was parted out over the remaining ticks, which means that Doton does decisively less than Raiton on single target. Meanwhile, to stop the weird Doton hide shenanigans, Hide added the effect of cancelling Doton when used, so you could no longer place Doton before combat in this way. Now that is a lot of talk about how Doton works now and why it isn't good on single target now, but you may be wondering how we got here in the first place. In Shadowbringers, Raiton did 800 potency and Doton did 9 ticks of 100 potency. Remember that it was 8 obvious dot ticks and then the janky bonus tick number 9. This meant that there were endless discussions and arguments over whether Raiton was equal to Doton if you didn't know about the 9th tick, or if Doton was better than Raiton if you did know about it. Why would anyone care? Because Doton in a single target boss fight is very difficult to use. You need to know where to place Doton such that all of the ticks lands, because if more than one tick misses, you should have used Raiton instead. Simply, it is much easier if Doton is just not better, right? Back in Shadowbringers, on single target, you optimally wanted to place Doton and keep it going for the entire fight if you could. In Endwalker, not so much. In fact, at level 90, Doton isn't worth using on 2 targets either due to the benefit of Raiton and Raiju. What a fall from grace that is, huh? Also, a little bonus thought. If the hide shenanigans were removed, but Doton stayed at 24 seconds, it is not unlikely we would have seen an at least 25-second long opener which involved casting Futon Hide, placing Doton, and then simply waiting for the ninjutsu to be fully charged and then using Suiton as normal. On the off chance that maybe the last 4 seconds of Doton would land just 1 tick of damage on the boss, the duration was likely shortened to protect us from ourselves in that regard. Now, the 5th and final trick, at this point almost like a tradition with these list type videos, is Black Mage with Transpose Lines. Which is not just a specific trick, but an entire bag of tricks which, knowing Black Mages, is not even that strange when you think about it. Now, I want to be super clear and repeat that janky optimization tricks do not mean that they are bad. It just means that it is weird and extremely punishing to get wrong. Black Mage Transpose Lines are one of, if not the most complicated rotation optimization strategies in the game, and messing it up can grind your rotation completely to a halt. In many cases, these transpose lines come with a small DPS increase to use over doing the base rotation, and no other benefit. Other times, a transpose line may offer slightly more mobility when performed correctly. So in those cases, maybe not following the transpose line may have meant you had to do nothing while running instead. So at times, the gain may be bigger than the potential loss. Now, what even is a transpose line? In the very first levels of the Black Mage, you had to use transpose to effectively switch between ice and fire, and by level 35 you simply switched with Blizzard 3 and Fire 3, or B3F3 for short. The only time you needed to use transpose was to keep your buff going between pulls. Transpose got relegated to be an out-of-combat niche tool, and when Umbral Soul came in Shadowbringers, some Black Mages would just use Transpose to switch to Ice and fill with Umbral Soul instead, further minimizing Transpose's position in the toolkit. Enter Transpose Lines. Rather than switching elements with B3 or F3 as you normally would, you skip the weakened but faster spellcast entirely with Transpose. This then leads to some sequence of spells that ultimately will do more damage than the standard sequence. A transpose line is a sequence of casts with specific characteristics that ends after a fire phase, cited from Reyna from the Balance. The simplest example of a transpose line requires the Firestarter proc for your next F3 to be instant, named AF1 F3P standard by Reyna, meaning Astral Fire 1, Fire 3 proc standard. Now, you don't want the F3 you use from Umbral Ice state to be instant. It is extremely wasteful to use it there, so usually Black Mages will simply spend Firestarter during the Astral Fire state they acquired the proc in. This line thus starts when you enter Umbral Ice. You use B3, Blizzard 4 and Paradox at minimum, as this will take over 6 seconds, ensuring 2 MP ticks maxing out your MP. Nothing prevents you from also adding Xenoglossy or Thunder 3 to the sequence, as long as you finish with a free and instant spell like Paradox or Xenoglossy. Then you transpose to switch to Astral Fire 1 right at the end, and that is where you use Fire 3 to pull yourself up to Astral Fire 3, and then followed by a completely normal Astral Fire state. The difference in spending the Fire Starter normally and using it in this line is that when used normally, you spend 2 GCDs, one before the line would start, one after Paradox, on 2 F3s, one at 180% power and one at 70% power. By following the line instead, you use 1 GCD on 1 F3 at 140% power. Keep in mind that the 2 F3s from the normal sequence average out to 125% power. So the implication is that Fire 4, Despair and Paradox all do significantly more damage than F3. And so using 2 125% power F3s is worse for your rotation overall than just using 1 140% power F3. If you have to use at least one. For those interested, the damage difference between doing this line and doing the standard style is about 1%. Now, I did say that transpose lines are a whole bag of tricks, and I'm sure you didn't come here expecting a full lecture in advanced black magery, so I will leave it at that. If, however, you are interested in learning more about this, I will leave a link to Reyna's guide detailing this entire subject in the video description. So, that is all for this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to support me and my channel, you can like the video, leave a comment, subscribe and hit the bell to get notified when next I post a video. If you want to give even more support than that, you can also become a member of the channel. Fun fact, back before 5.1 in Shadowbringers, ninjas ninjutsus were actually OGCD, meaning that to cast Doton you had to weave 3 mudras and Doton itself in around 1.6 seconds considering animation lock and futon. Shocking no one, regularly quadruple weaving wasn't really reliable, not even for players with excellent connections. In fact, on bad enough connections, it was a DPS gain to cast Fuma Shuriken over Raiton simply because Fuma Shuriken was a somewhat realistically feasible double weave, whereas Raiton was a triple weave.